I'm speaking to Bob Winnington today from the Money Advice Liaison Group. So, hi Bob, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thanks, Helen. You?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks so much
Good.
for joining me today. And we're just going to have a bit of a chat, if that's okay, about the Money Advice Liaison Group. Obviously, something that I've been involved with since I started in this role, and I've got so much out of it. So I'm really grateful that you were able to give us some time to talk about it today.
Delighted to do so, and yeah, more than happy to support. What is a great podcast. So yeah, delighted to be here today, Helen.
Fantastic. So I just wanted to sort of go back in history a little bit and sort of learn about where the Money Advice Liaison Group sort of came from.
Okay, well, it's been in existence for approaching 35 years now, so quite a while. Certainly predates me by a considerable amount of time. I've been with the organisation for the last 5.5 years. And yeah, it was born through a chap called Anthony Sharp, who was very much at the forefront of its creation. And really, Anthony was the lifeblood of the Money Advice Liaison Group for many years, and ran it really well, established regional groups, and particularly, I think the MALG Conference was very much the flagship event for MALG in the past. And yeah, it's run very, very successfully. Anthony decided he wanted to retire, and I had the opportunity to take up the reins, as I say, about 5.5 years ago. So yes, that time has absolutely flown, and it's been a very interesting experience since I joined MALG, particularly, dare I say it, over the last 18 months.
Yes, absolutely. It's I think everybody's had some new experiences over the last 18 months. It's been a bit of a time for everyone. But MALG's reacted to that really well. And my whole involvement in it has obviously been virtual because I've not been in this role that long. But how did you what were the challenges posed by the pandemic to the running of MALG, and how did you sort of decide to overcome those?
Well, I think just sort of picking back on part of the history and a little of my history. I was in banking for many years and worked for the Institute of Customer Service. And having worked for another membership organisation and in the finance industry prior to that, I'd had a really valuable insight into how an organisation like MALG could work. So when I took over from Anthony, I could see an opportunity to develop the organisation. He'd really created some very powerful foundation stones, which gave us the ability to develop the organisation quite considerably. And part of that development was really about our online presence and the website, which really we developed quite a bit, and we are still developing and have done some very recent additional developments to the website. But also we reached out into the world of social media, which was a world in which MALG hadn't tiptoed into very readily before then. And I think a combination of all of those things alerted us to what was happening at the start of 2020. And we could see the potential for challenges that ultimately came to the fore. And so we'd already done some initial planning and work around how could we look to develop an online presence for our meetings, because prior to that, MALG really had predicated its whole existence on face-to-face meetings and networking, bringing people together to work together to support the lives of people in debt. And that's really the whole essence of what MALG's about. Mm-hmm. So we could see the potential for the need to look at an online presence and to look at the potential for bringing our meetings onto one of the social platforms. And indeed, we decided to use Zoom. That was we'd had some experience with that, but quite limited. And so really we geared ourselves up in March so that when the announcement was made by Boris Johnson on the 23rd of March, we really launched straight away the Friday Forum on the 27th. So literally the Friday of that week of the first announcement, we held the first Friday Forum, and that has continued to operate ever since, weekly throughout 2020. and then we moved to fortnightly meetings on a Friday in 2021. And I think the opportunity to bring ourselves into a virtual position then opened up extra dimensions that we've developed since then as well, Helen. So we've moved all of our national meetings, all of our regional meetings onto the Zoom platform, onto the virtual platform, and attracted a very wide spectrum of attendees, not just what I call the hardcore MALG members, but actually some new, totally new members, but also some of the people who work for organisations more geographically remote or who may have had difficulties in being released from their offices to attend meetings were able to come along to our virtual meetings. Yeah. So it did transition the organisation very considerably over the last 18 months.
I think that's a really interesting thought, actually, that potentially for people who want to get involved but are concerned about the time investment or anything along those lines for travelling to an in-person meeting, the stakes are so much lower for an online meeting that actually you just think, oh, well, I'll go along and I'll give it a go. I'll see what this is all about. And then by the time you've done that, you actually realise how valuable it is. So you've potentially got a much more effective sort of outreach tool in that sense to bring more people on board than potentially a face-to-face meeting would have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And to a degree, did we know that beforehand? No, we didn't. Otherwise, we would have done it earlier. Circumstances drove us to take that action. But you're absolutely right. It has highlighted the issues you've just mentioned to a point where we're already in the midst of planning for 2022. And our intentions right the way through are to develop a blended approach for our meetings, to have a combination of both face-to-face and virtual meetings. So we will continue with virtual meetings, both nationally and regionally. We've said our planning at this stage is to have at least one face-to-face meeting and at least one virtual meeting, both nationally and regionally. Which means that we've got an opportunity to continue to engage with those people who have difficulties in attending face-to-face meetings, but also gives those people who historically and also looking forward really value the opportunity to be in the same room physically as other people, to have those conversations over a coffee before, during and after the meeting, to have those opportunities to network with people who they've never met before. And to bring back, part of the foundations of MALG, which is face-to-face engagement and networking.
I mean, I think, like you say, from the point of view of that digital engagement side, I think that's what one of the benefits of that is MALG's, for me, really unique in that it's one of the very few places where you're bringing together the money advice sector with the creditors. A lot of the times we have creditor networks and we have money advice networks, but the MALG groups are sort of the only times that I have these really open conversations that bridge the two industries. And I think the digital platform is really positive for that, because it means that people don't feel as committed maybe to start off with, and then immediately do understand that they can get so much out of it. It's like from my experience, the Friday forums, I learn a lot that's really pertinent to my job, and obviously that I can take away and spread to our organisation. But I also learn things that I'm like, oh, me as a person can do better with my money. Like me as a person, I need to think about these things that are coming up or whatever. And I just think it's such a positive experience for me. But then also it's such an important experience for the money advice sector as well, to get the creditor input on issues that maybe they haven't thought of from that perspective. So it's a really interesting sort of mix of perspectives for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. When I first came into MALG, I didn't know those type of nuances myself. And so, I'd learned an awful lot when I first came into the role. listened to people a great deal, asked a lot of questions, tried to understand what made MALG tick, and try and pick out the things that I felt we could develop that could make that engagement even better. Historically, and very much today, it's not just the blend of creditors and advisors, but also the third group of people who are a very important part of MALG are the regulators and the government departments and people who operate in a more central sphere and establish, develop and educate through changes in policies, etc. Mm-hmm. So I think the blended approach of those three groups is undoubtedly unique. Yeah. And I think that's where MALG really does position itself in a very different place than any other organisation. But you're right, I'm still learning stuff myself. There was an absolute gem on one of the Friday forums recently where I learnt that if you are filling it with petrol and you do it at the petrol pump, it commits your card to either £90 or £100, depends on which pump you're at, even if you're only spending 30.
Yeah. And
for people who have difficulties and have debt problems, that can really cause major headaches for them. So the tip was very much go and pay in the kiosk. So I haven't paid at the pump since. So
I was going to say I literally text everybody I knew, I think, after that forum and was like, do you realise this is a thing? Because I mean, even if you're you're doing fairly well and you're solvent, if you're using your current account, like £100 just disappearing until it's properly authorised is a concern for anyone, I think. So yeah. That was actually exactly the tip I was thinking of when I said that I was learning things for my own personal finances as well.
Absolutely.
But you're right when you mentioned about bringing the regulators and policymakers together as well. Obviously, one of the really major sort of talking points for my entire time conversing with MALG and just a lot of my role has obviously been breathing space. And I think MALG's been such a valuable resource for people who have been trying to put those things in place from a creditor point of view for their customers, because we've been able to understand sort of such a variety of perspectives on the issue that actually that's potentially really benefited our implementation of those regulations. And obviously MALG's been really fortunate, or you've been really proactive rather in getting speakers from the involved bodies along to the meetings. So we've obviously heard from the Insolvency Service and other sort of stakeholder organisations, and that's obviously been really beneficial as well. So I think that's another massive sort of positive that MALG brings is your ability to bring those speakers into those situations, really.
Well, we're very fortunate in a way that we do have a strong membership, and also we have a very strong network, and there are a number of very, very good speakers on certain topics who are, if you like, MALG regulars, but we try not to be calling them back all the time. I feel as though the Insolvency Service have been extremely supportive, both at national and regional meetings, but we've almost taken about as much of their capacity as we dare. And, you know, there will always be an appetite to find out more about breathing space and other similar schemes and new developments that will come along that we don't even know about yet. Mm-hmm. But we just have to try and get that balance right, to try and get a variety of different speakers, try and identify the right topics. So I'm constantly talking with our members, talking with other people, keeping my ear to the ground to try and identify the types of topics that will be of interest. And I think the other thing as well is to try and get the right balance between strategy and operations, because there are changes. You know, breathing space is a good example, a whole new thing that came along. So that's important to be able to bring that to the attention of people. And then operationally, so what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And so it shifts into an operational mechanism. But it's also important, and one of the things that I'm very much factoring into my thinking for 2022 is around how do we bring some strategic thinking to the table as well. What are the next things that are going to come down? What are the challenges that are going to face money advisors into the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? And these are the type of things that we must continue to challenge ourselves on, to make sure that we bring value to our members.
Definitely. And I think, like you say, the unique blend of the three perspectives as well. What change can we potentially make as a group to the way those things develop? How can we proactively affect those things? Because I think that's something that we absolutely have the membership and the reach to do. Sure. When we go to these meetings, it's really, really exciting to see the people that are there.
Good.
So having talked about how important and useful digital forums are, returning to face-to-face, we've obviously got the MALG Conference coming up in October. Very, very excited about that. Obviously, I'm sure you are too. So I thought, firstly, I'd plug it. And second of all, that I'd ask what you're looking forward to.
Well, yes, I think it's been a long time coming. I think 2019 was the last conference, and for obvious reasons we couldn't hold one last year. But what we did was to create a virtual event, and we had the MALG Virtual Summit in October last year, which was very much a step into new territory for us. We hadn't done anything of that magnitude with over 200 delegates attending for the day, and that went well, and I hope everybody who attended it got real value out of it. Certainly the feedback we received was very positive, to a point where we decided to hold a further virtual event in March, the Virtual Connect event, which again went down very well. We had different subjects, different discussions. We changed it. We listened to the feedback. We actually made it slightly longer, slightly less frenetic. I think the first one was really, you had to be on your toes. It was pretty fast paced. This was a slightly slower pace, but tried to open up the breakout sessions to be a bit longer. And leading into the conference, yes, we are very excited about it. We're thrilled to be able to bring it face to face. Obviously, we know that there will be some individuals who will have natural concerns and hesitancies about going. We also know that some organisations may not be in the position to release people. So it is a step into the unknown to a degree. It's not an automatic assumption we will have X number of people there. But we do sincerely hope that we will get a good number of attendees and a very positive event. We're taking every step we can do to safeguard people. We're very close liaison with the hosts at 11 Cavendish Square in London. And yeah, we're working on quite an exciting programme. I think one thing that we can sort of flag is that the theme for the event will be leadership, inclusivity and diversity. And we have a fabulous keynote speaker to kickstart proceedings, who is Sheldon Mills from the FCA. And to have the FCA there with a senior member of their team kickstarting things is fantastic and a real feather in our cap. And I'm a bit like you. I'm not going to let too much out of the bag in terms of the rest of the event, so to speak. We will be making some announcements in early September, but we will be having some really interesting breakout sessions. I'll give a little sneak preview. It won't be specifically on breathing space. We're going to widen that out into debt options and what other options are there, and look not just at England, but actually look at the devolved nations as well, because obviously we are a UK organisation. We have members throughout England, Ireland, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So we want to make sure that we're engaging all of them. We will be looking at vulnerability, because that is another continuing hot topic which is really important to all of our members and indeed their clients. And we are also going to be doing a little bit of work around well-being in its broader sense as well, because you touched on personal learnings that you've had, Helen, and I think it's also everybody, irrespective of what role they're in and what position they're in. The last 18 months hasn't been easy for anybody. And I think it's important for us to not just recognise that fact, but actually to do something along those lines as well. So we are going to build in a well-being element to what we're doing as well on the 28th of October. So yeah, it's hopefully will be an exciting event that everybody will really value and enjoy.
Definitely. Well, I'm really excited, mostly just because I'll be out and not in my house anymore, but also because I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, I think you're so right about well-being. I think especially for people in industries like Money Advice, the focus is so much on the clients that potentially people forget to take that minute to sort of center themselves in how they're coping with everything. And obviously it's been a wild ride for everyone, but especially for those who are actively helping other people who are struggling perhaps even more. So I think that's a really positive idea, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Brilliant.
Great. Well, thanks ever so much for your time, Bob. I'll be seeing you very shortly anyway for another Friday forum. But thanks for taking the time to have a chat with me today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Helen, and thank you for inviting me. And yes, it's good to be able to have a discussion, and I'm really delighted that you're finding a lot of value out of MALG membership, and long may that continue.
Thanks very much, Bob.
Thanks, Helen.